How many people sit on the couch and talk about things they're going to do and they never actually do anything? They just sit on the couch and talk about it. I think the minute you stop learning, right? Like the minute that you stop trying to learn new things, then I think you become stagnant as a human being. I'm a guy that if I think about something, I want to put it into action. I want to see it manifest itself in the world in a tangible way. Doing the Krav Maga gets me out of the house twice a week, right? So I get out, I'm getting healthy. I'm taking the course, the school itself and the training is excellent. I must tell you that. Thank you, sir. And I look forward to it. Every week I look forward to it. Like the first few nights I came back, the first few sessions I came back, and she was like, "So?" I go, "This is a mountain. This is not a hill. This is a mountain." I go, "Give me 3 months though, and it'll feel much more natural. The things that you've taught me, I'm now understanding a bit of the principle behind why these things are being taught the way they are, as opposed to, maybe somebody that didn't care enough or cares much about making sure it got done right. You're very much, I see you in that class. You're at the other end of the room and I can hear you, "Chris, eyes up." So you're situationally aware of the entire room, which tells me something else altogether as well. It tells me that, that your focus is right there. One of the things I thought was really an eye-opener for me is when you were testing for level 2 and how quickly everybody forgets everything they learned from level 1 as soon as they're in that environment where they're being
under stress.
Yeah, like they immediately, like you said, right? That means you got to put more hours into it. Like for me, if I could do 5 hours a day, I would, and I do. And the nights and the days that we train, I also come home and I do another 2 hours at home. Because like for me, the only person I'm competing with is myself. And so I know if I'm being lazy, right? If I go, "Oh, it's Sunday, I could just sit on the couch and play games on my phone," or I could go downstairs and put 2 hours in and just practicing. I have to train my body to understand instinctively where my hands are at, where my feet are at, where my eyes are at, And then once that's natural, and it becomes natural, it will,
It's going to become your reflex.
Yeah. Like I'm not looking to fight anybody. Nobody is. But if you know how to defend yourself correctly, you don't have to fight anybody, because chances are you carry yourself in a way that people will pick that up anyways, and they're not going to want to, cross that line. With this, taking all of that, all the self-defense stuff, and put that on the side for a second, it's the mental discipline, that we lack in society. I've said that earlier and I'll say it again. I think, I teach my kids, I have 2 daughters, and I teach them about mental discipline. Like I say to them, because something's hard doesn't mean that it's going to be hard forever. It means that you haven't tried it before, or you haven't experienced it, so it's hard. The more you bathe in the fire, the more you learn to understand. That's a big one for me too. Like respect is everything. Without respect, you're what do you have? Nothing. You're an empty shell of a human being. So I thought you taught a beautiful lesson to that young man that day. Something he probably never would have thought about in a million years. Nobody took him aside and said, "Hey, there's a way to behave around people. There's a way to behave around your friends. Understand that the two things aren't necessarily compatible," right? Probably made him a better guy that day. Maybe just an increment, but just that much. Because we're also undisciplined in this day and age. Everybody just wants to do what they want to do. Instant gratification. Nobody wants to put time into things, And you can never, it doesn't matter what you do in this world. If you don't put the time in, you'll never be you will never succeed at the thing that you're trying to be successful at. So it's dedication. I rehearse as a musician 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. Since I started with the Krav Maga, I've added that to my schedule. So I do 2 hours of music, then 2 hours of training, whatever techniques I was taught that day or that week. I can do that now for the rest of my life. It will be part of who I am now moving forward, because there's no perfection in it, but you're striving for that perfect union. Probably the most important lesson of all is that eye contact. If you're riding a motorcycle, what do they say? You have to have 5 points of articulation to ride a bike. You have to be able to look straight ahead, to be able to look here, and you have to be able to look there. And you got to be able to do it all at once almost. You know, because you never know. On a bike, you're very vulnerable, right? So you have to be able to be situationally aware at all times. Well, I know that. And I think with this, it's the exact same thing. You know, like you said, oh, you might be lucky and it might be one attacker. What if it's 3? What if it's 5? You know, and it's you by yourself. You know, how quickly can you ideally you want to take out 2 and then the other ones just don't want any piece of it, right? You know, but if that's not the case and you're fighting for your life and you don't know what to do, you're in trouble. But if you know what to do, at least you've given yourself that chance, you know, that most people probably wouldn't have. Look, I've told you the story of being at the bar with my daughter and the guy trying to start something with me, having my daughter there, knowing I'm not going to do that in front of her. And number one, I'm not going to do it anyways. I'm not there to do that. And I was able to de-escalate it with my words, right? So that to me is always the first thing you go to. You try to de-escalate it. Well, even if you have to lay a compliment on somebody, you know, whatever you do to make them, just to take them down a bit. Because they're probably not really, you know, their adrenaline's running too. You know, they're thinking about what's going to happen. So if you can take them down, you can probably avoid conflict 9 times out of 10. But that one time that person's just dead set on doing something, you'd rather be able to know how to defend yourself and never have to use it than to have that situation where, man, I wished I would have known how to hold my hands or how to stand properly or keep my balance better, or if it comes down to it, take the guy's knee out. You know, nobody, I don't know any human being, man. When you boot their knee out, they don't want to fight no more. They don't want to fight. It's just not. But you better know how to do that, because if you don't do that technique correctly, that, the nose too, like just, you know, like, so there are ways, and this is what we're learning, you know, we're learning how not to fight, but if you have to, how not to lose, right? And as you said, not as a fighter, but as a warrior. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you're fighting for something greater than yourself, right? You're trying to protect your family, your friends, your community. Even if that community is just the people around you at that particular moment. I wish our country was kind of more like Israel in the way where, you know, people are more thinking about that. I know it's wrong because I know the reason that they have to is horrific and it's unfortunate, but they're tough people, you know, like badass people. I have one of my songs called Another Fool, it's called. And the song lyrically is about accepting death, coming to terms with that. You know, I don't think we spend enough time understanding that, so we waste our life because we don't think about that. So I wrote a song called Another Fool, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was going through some serious depression. I didn't know, but he said, "Hey man, I just wanted to tell you, I was in a really bad, dark place, and it was about as dark as I've ever been, and I was starting to think some pretty crazy thoughts. And then I went and I listened to your song, Another Fool, and he goes, the first thing that I did is I cried like a baby, because I haven't cried since I was a kid. As soon as I heard the lyrics, it was like you wrote that song for me, for right in this moment. And that song, I cried everything out, I got it all out of my system, and that I was fine. But I just wanted to let you know, so that if you don't think what you're doing touches people, it did. That's all I'm doing it for. And so I look at what you're doing in the same, we're the same in that way, you know. You're trying to give people tools, tools to not just for fighting, but for living, for being a better person if you can. And the only way you can do that is you have to go down the dark road. Because if you're preaching from the balcony, nobody cares. But if they know that you've been down there and what you're telling them you've learned the hard way, that message resonates better, And it's because it's authentic, It's not hyperbole or lip service. You're actually saying, no, man, believe me, I'm showing you what you need to know, and you have to do it this way because this is the way that it works, whether it's a technique or life, right? You have to learn everything, and you have to know it as second nature. Every single technique, every move, like not one is any more important or less important than the other. They're all important. They all have to be, so, having a good instructor makes all the difference in the world.
Just another fool dying, wishing he could see another day. But don't be hard.